الاسم ستيوارت جونز، المواليد 1959. الوظيفة سفير الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية في بغداد. التحصيل الدراسي كلية الحقوق في جامعة دوك بولاية بنسلفانيا. المناصب سفير الولايات المتحدة في الأردن عام 2011، وعمل كنائب للسفير الأمريكي في العراق عام 2010، ومنصب نائب مساعد وزير الخارجية للشؤون عام 2004. خلال مسيرته الدبلوماسية خدم سفير جونز في عدة دول منها تركيا والسلفادور وكولومبيا، وعمل كمساعد لمادلين أولبرايت الممثل الدائم للولايات المتحدة في الأمم المتحدة.
Mr. the Ambassador Stewart Jones, how do you introduce yourself to the Iraqi people?
Rula, thank you so much for having me today on your program. It's an honor to have you here in our home.
Thank you.
My name is Stewart Jones. I'm the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq.
That's it.
That's it.
So let's talk about how they appointed you the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq. Was it a surprise or you discussed it with your government before coming here?
Well, it's a great honor to be appointed to be the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq or to be appointed to a U.S. Ambassador to any country. So I was previously serving as U.S. Ambassador in Jordan, and I had an inkling that I might be called upon to come to Iraq. I had served here twice before, in 2004 and in 2010 and 11. And my predecessor in Jordan had served 3 years here as ambassador to Iraq. So I think there may have been an expectation that I would follow him. But again, it was a great honor and delight for me to be able to return to Iraq as ambassador to serve the American people here and also to serve the Iraqi people.
And what's the difference between Jordan and Iraq?
Well, you know, Jordan is a country that is struggling with a great inundation of refugees, just as Iraq is struggling with a huge number of displaced people. Jordan's also facing very difficult economic challenges, just as Iraq is. Jordan has not had to deal with Daesh in the same way that Iraq has. But you know, we had a wonderful time in Jordan. It was we loved the people there. We loved the opportunity to serve there. We loved the opportunity to provide economic support during an economically difficult time for Jordan. And of course, we're delighted to be here in Iraq.
And what's your life like in Iraq? Do you have friends? How do you spend your time here?
Yeah. Well, you know, the third tour is nice for me because I have been able to make friends in Iraq over the last decade. And it's exciting for me to be able to reconnect with some of the people who I knew back in 2004 in Ramadi, and also some of the people I knew in 2010 and 11. And of course, I'm making new friends here. So that's exciting. I try to get out as much as I can. I try to be out in the community. I try to get to know as many new people as I can.
Okay, and could you please tell us about your educational background?
So I grew up in Philadelphia, and I attended Duke University, which is in North Carolina. And I studied history. And then I went to law school at the University of Pennsylvania and graduated with a Juris Doctor from law school. From there, I practiced law briefly before I joined the Foreign Service.
And what brought you to the diplomacy field?
Well, I had been working in the law firm for a year, and I realized that I really didn't want to spend my whole lifetime in the office, in a law office. I realized I wanted to be able to travel. I'd had a very exciting trip right after law school, traveling around Latin America as a vacation. But I realized I wanted to do that all the time, not just as a vacation. And so that led me to the decision to join the Foreign Service.
And, I mean, if you were not an ambassador, what would you be? What's your dream when you were a teenager?
Well, again, I had gone through law school, and many of my law school classmates are enjoying wonderful lives, practicing law in various cities around the United States. Some of them are serving also in government service jobs as lawyers. Some of them are doing other things to help people. I think the important thing for me has always to be in a position of public service.
Okay. And what profession you dislike or you don't like to be a part of?
Well, again, anything where I could not be of service to the public, I think would make me uncomfortable.
Okay. What surprised you in Iraq when you first came here?
What surprises
Any
me...
situation?
Yeah. I'll tell you what always surprises me when I come to Iraq. It's the resilience of the Iraqi people. It's the ability of the Iraqi people to contend with problems that are really very difficult, and yet to manage them and to maintain a positive attitude and look forward to a better day. That surprises me about the Iraqi people, but it also inspires me.
Could you tell us about the things you are missing in Baghdad?
You know, I guess what I miss in Baghdad most are weekends. Because here at the U.S. Embassy, we are working 7 days a week to try to advance U.S. interests and support Iraqi interests. And there's really not a day off. There's not a day just to do nothing. Every single day we're meeting with Iraqis. We're trying to support our programs. We're carrying out humanitarian work. We're supporting the Iraqi security forces. And really, because of the challenges that Iraq is facing, you can't really enjoy relaxing. You have to feel like you're working all the time, and that's really what we do here.
Okay. Do you exercise?
I try to exercise. I don't exercise as much as I should. I'm sure I don't exercise as much as you, but I try to get to the gym every day.
Oh, by the way, I don't exercise at all.
Okay, well, you don't need it then.
Mr. Ambassador, the United States is very well known to support educational and cultural fellowship programs.
Yes.
When you go to the website now, you see like 9 programs are no longer active.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So that's a great question, and I appreciate your answering it. You're asking it. So those are active programs. Those are 9 programs that are active. And what happens is that they take applications in certain parts of the year. Okay. So some of those programs you can apply in February, some of them you can apply in April. So they're showing that this is not a time to take applications. But I appreciate the feedback, Lula, because I think what we'll do is we'll change our website to make it more clear, so people will not be discouraged from applying from those programs. We're really excited about our exchange programs. We have more than 6,000 exchange program alumni in Iraq.
Yes.
It's one of the biggest exchange programs in the world. And we're always looking for new applicants for our Young Leaders program, which can take people to the United States for summer camp in the summer, Fulbright scholarships, Humphrey scholarships. There's a lot of terrific opportunities for exchange and study in the United States. And of course, I'd love to see as many Iraqi students and exchange people come as can come.
Yeah, so cultural cooperation is very important to Iraqis to develop their abilities to better manage their country.
It's an important part of the Strategic Framework Agreement. And we have thousands of Iraqi students studying in American universities today, and they're doing extremely well. And they're coming back, and they're bringing those skills to Iraq, whether it's in agriculture or science or journalism. And I think that this is also enriching the people that they come into contact with in the United States.
Usually the ambassadors of foreign countries and European countries attend art exhibitions in Iraq, especially that Iraq is very well known in art work. So do you do the same?
I try to, yes. When I was here previously, I hosted an Iraqi art show, and we had all the foreign diplomats come and a lot of the people that we knew, and the Iraqi painters exhibited all their paintings.
Yes.
And, we raised, I think, something like $50,000 for the Iraqi painters. It was a great opportunity for them to sell their paintings. And I think we're going to try to do that again this year.
Yeah, but do you attend exhibitions in Iraq?
Whenever I can, yes.
Yeah, and what about the security measures?
Well, I don't want to get into any details about security, but I think, usually these things are can be safely attended. The other ambassadors are going, and I'm going.
Well, consumer and investment companies remain absent from the Iraqi market. Are you satisfied with this cooperation between Iraq and the United States in the economic field?
Yeah, I'm not satisfied. My feeling is that there's tremendous opportunity here for U.S. firms, from all kinds of U.S. firms. Of course, we see U.S. companies here in Iraq that are associated with the oil industry. You'd expect that. And they're doing very well, and they're very happy with their relationship with Iraq. But I think you're right. I think there's a need and an opportunity for other companies to come as well. And that's really something that we spend a lot of time on here at the embassy, is encouraging these firms to come. Now, one thing about U.S. firms is that if they come, they really, they are great corporate citizens. They contribute to the communities. They create jobs. They introduce new technologies. They bring a lot to the economy. But they also expect, what we call a level playing field. And, in the United States, U.S. firms can be prosecuted. They can go to jail for being involved in illegal activities, even abroad. So these companies want to come out here, and they want to have a very level playing field, and they want to feel that if they're making a bid or making a contract, that they're going to be treated fairly. And I think we need to improve that business environment here in Iraq to be able to bring those U.S. firms here.
They don't have other concerns to invest in Iraq?
Yeah, I think they have concerns to invest in Iraq like they have concerns in other countries. Of course, there are security concerns here.
Yes.
And there's also regulatory challenges. It's difficult to come into Iraq as a new business. But I think, thanks to the leadership of His Excellency Prime Minister Abadi, you're going to see a lot more U.S. firms coming into the market and doing business here. They're very encouraged by his reform platform. They're very encouraged by his stand against corruption. And I'm seeing a lot of interest in the U.S. business community in Iraq. In fact, one of the things that we've done during my time here is that we've revived the Iraqi-American Chamber of Commerce, so that U.S. firms now have a forum here in Iraq to get together and work together to develop the business environment.
And what other plans do you have to develop this cooperation?
Well, again, so we've established this American Chamber, which I think is going to be very positive.
Okay.
We're also working through providing technical assistance in certain ministries to help them with their regulatory frameworks. And of course, this is always at the invitation of the Iraqi government. We don't do anything where we're not welcome. Another thing that we're doing is we're just encouraging these companies to come.
Okay. And if we want to talk about the bilateral relations between Iraq and the United States, how do you define it?
Yeah. The strategic framework agreement that exists between our two countries is a very unique agreement. It's an important agreement for us, and it's an important agreement of Iraq. It has numerous components. Some of them you've already touched on, the cultural exchange and the education exchange. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's also a security component to the strategic framework agreement. And the United States is very proud to be supporting the Iraqi security forces, including the Peshmerga and the Popular Mobilization, to defeat Daesh. And this security relationship has also introduced the F-16s and the M1 tanks. This is cutting-edge security technology that is benefiting the Iraqi people. But again, I think the importance of the strategic framework agreement means that the relationship is going to be very broad and very deep. So I'm very excited about bringing, United States technology, United States access to international markets, so that Iraq can enter into the bond market and be able to obtain support from international institutions, help Iraq obtain access to the international financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF, which the United States is the primary shareholder. These are all areas where I think we can help to promote the relationship.
What level of advice has the U.S. offered, advice and assistance in the economic field to the Iraqi government?
Well, again, one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the pertinent ministries to get access to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So 2 weeks ago, His Excellency, the Minister of Finance, Hoshiyar Zebari, met with IMF representatives in Amman and entered into a staff-monitored program which creates a macroeconomic framework for Iraq going forward. Some members of my team were there to support the ministry personnel. And because of this staff-monitored program, now Iraq is qualified for $1.2 billion in new money from the World Bank and that money will be delivered before the end of the year.
Okay.
So this is immediately helping Iraq address its fiscal challenges. So we're providing technical assistance in the Ministry of Finance in this way and in some other ways. We're also working with the Ministry of Oil to help boost production, to boost storage, to boost exports, which of course will increase Iraqi oil revenues. We're also helping the Ministry of Finance look at other areas where they can develop revenues that will be non-oil revenues, customs taxes and things like this. How can they be collected in a way that's really technologically efficient? These are all things that the government's asking us to do, which we're happy to do. We've worked with the Office of the Prime Minister on an electricity generation and financing workshop to address the challenges of electricity generation that we know we're going to face next summer. We've worked with them on a tax and customs workshop. We've worked with them on a variety of these workshops where we can sort of bring outside experts into the Prime Minister's office, and we bring the other ministries and we introduce them and we generate ideas for solutions.
Do you have a general advice to give to the Iraqi government, advice related to the economic field?
Well, I think my advice is, of course, is to listen to the Prime Minister. I think the Prime Minister has a very clear vision for the reforms that have to take place to get the economy back on track, even despite the collapse or the reduction in oil prices.
The United States is concerned in human trafficking.
Yes.
And the embassy has issued 2 reports mentioning that they are not satisfied with how they are dealing with it. Are you following up on this matter?
Well, you know, human trafficking is a terrible crime, ruins countless lives. I think this incursion of Daesh into Iraq has really created much more pressure in the area of human trafficking. It's really because of the kidnapping of women and the trafficking in women that Daesh is involved in. This is really a despicable crime, and we have to combat it as we combat Daesh.
Okay.
So we're supporting, of course, the government, and we're supporting civil society to combat this trafficking and also to support the victims of trafficking when they're able to be recovered. It's a big priority, I know, for your government, and it's a big priority for us.
Moving on to the political portfolio.
Yes.
Is managing a U.S. embassy, as big as a U.S. embassy, exhaustive and tiring?
It's inspiring, really. This is the biggest U.S. embassy in the world, and we have a terrific team of professionals here, Americans and Iraqis, working together to serve American interests and also to serve Iraqi interests. And it's fun to work in an embassy where you're really working for mutual interests, and where you have close contacts in the government and close contacts with the people, and you're working to improve lives. And I think that we are able to do that. You know, we're supporting the security forces in the fight against Daesh. We're supporting the humanitarian response, and we're supporting the economic recovery. So it's a busy embassy, it's a complicated embassy, but we're doing important work. And for that reason, I think it's energizing.
And are all the issues tackled in the embassy related to Iraq only or the region?
We are primarily focused on Iraq. But as you know, one of the contributions that the United States has made to the fight against Daesh is that we have formed a 62-member coalition, international coalition, to defeat Daesh. And so one of my jobs, of course, here in Baghdad is to coordinate the activities of these 62 countries who are supporting the Iraqi government. Some of them are supporting the Iraqi government in the fight against Daesh militarily. Some of them are supporting the Iraqi government in the humanitarian response. And there's a lot of ways that we can work together to support the people of Iraq.
You were appointed U.S. ambassador to Iraq when the Iraqi situation was much better than now. And where it was 1/3 of the country wasn't under the control of Daesh. Did you have a plan to resolve this?
Actually, Rula, when I came...
After you came, the Mosul, it was a drastic or a fall of the Mosul.
So I arrived on October 1, 2014. I would say that was maybe, from a standpoint of Daesh, the darkest time. It was Daesh had taken almost as much territory as it ever had in Iraq, and had only slightly started to recede. I also came after the election of His Excellency the Prime Minister and after the formation of his government. So I was very lucky to be able to have a strong partner immediately in the government, in the new government, to first defeat Daesh and address the humanitarian problems, and also to address the reconciliation challenge. And of course, His Excellency the Prime Minister has been a leader in developing solutions to reconciliation. This is an Iraqi approach which we support. So since I've been here, the Iraqi security forces have taken back 40% of the land that was once held by Daesh. That's a tremendous achievement. And we're very proud to support their efforts through our airstrikes, through our advise and assist, through our training and equipping, and through our intelligence support. Since I've been here, the Iraqi security forces have won in Tikrit. Okay. They've won in Beji. They've won in Sinjar. And now they're getting ready to win in Ramadi, which I'm very pleased to see. And you can be sure that the United States will continue to support the Iraqi security forces until Daesh is expelled from Iraq.
Do you think that there remains an opportunity for reconciliation between the Iraqi components?
I do. I think it's really important. And I think
it's important, but do you have hope?
Yes, I do. I have a lot of hope. I'm really, again, supportive of the efforts of the Prime Minister and of the people around him who are developing ideas to bring the components together. And I think there's a strong will within all of the components to come together as a sovereign, unified nation. That's our policy. The U.S. policy in Iraq is to support a unified and sovereign Iraq. Just this week, as you know, there was a meeting of provincial leaders from many of the provinces with high Sunni populations. And they have come up with a lot of ideas to support the process of reconciliation and unified governance. And I see the same willingness to work and cooperate on the Shia side and on the Kurdish side.
You just talked about the operation of Al-Anbar. Is there any time limit for it?
No, there's never, in military terms, I'm not a military person, but in military terms, it's hard to set timelines. I think the important thing is to set the priority that, of course, to resecure Ramadi as soon as possible. Once Ramadi is resecured from Daesh, a lot of really good things happen. That will free up a lot of Iraqi security forces. It'll free up a lot of the air support that we provided so that we can provide air support in other areas of Iraq to also put pressure on Daesh. It'll also allow really hundreds of thousands of people to return to their homes in the Euphrates River Valley. And of course, that'll alleviate some of the pressure on the government. So I think there's a real urgency to expel Daesh from Ramadi, which we of course support.
Well, you don't have a time frame for this.
It's impossible, I think, to put time frames on these things, and I wouldn't want to.
And what about Mosul? It's not a priority, you think?
Definitely. Mosul is a priority, and we need to move on Mosul as soon as possible. And I think, again, you will find a lot of cooperation with the security forces to do that. But I'm not going to talk about timelines.
An official at the U.S. State Department assured that his country is working on the participation of Arab forces in the fight of Daesh. What do you think of this?
So that's not a State Department idea, and that is not an idea that is coming out of the administration. Okay. So, we do have a 62-country coalition to defeat Daesh. And many of the Gulf states are contributing to that coalition in different ways, both here and in Syria. Not with forces, of course, but in other ways. They're providing humanitarian support, for example. As you're probably aware, the government of Kuwait has provided $200 million in humanitarian assistance this year. In 2014, the government of Saudi Arabia provided $500 million in humanitarian assistance. So there's a lot of support coming to Iraq from the region. We think that the coalition should use all of its talents and all of its capabilities to bring together to defeat Daesh. But that idea that you mentioned is not one that we are promoting.
Several reports mentioned the fact that the United States is providing Daesh with aids. And we saw this in, on many websites and on YouTube videos. So what do you say?
Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to clarify this point. It's really disappointing to me that after we've done so much together with the Iraqi security forces, these rumors or this disinformation is still out there. Let me assure you, and let me assure your viewers, that the United States does not support Daesh in any way. We are doing our best to defeat Daesh, to expel Daesh from Iraq and Syria, and really to defeat Daesh worldwide. There's no way that we would support Daesh in any possible way. You're seeing the terrible effects of Daesh around the world, the attacks in Turkey, the attacks in Paris, of course, the plane bombing in the Sinai against the Russians. But even before these terrible incidents, the United States had strongly committed ourselves to defeating Daesh, and we were providing support to the Iraqi security forces, and we were working to defeat Daesh inside of Syria and anywhere else it happens to be. Let me tell you a story. You know, just last week, the United States conducted an airstrike in Libya, and we took out Daesh terrorists. And this individual, this Iraqi, had been responsible for the massacre at Camp Speicher. So we're hunting Daesh down not only inside of Iraq and Syria, but also inside of Libya, wherever we can find them. So really, the idea, Rula, that the United States would support Daesh with anything in any way it's just wrong, and it's really unhelpful because it creates distrust between the United States and the Iraqi people that's not justified.
Why you didn't issue any statement or official statement to refuse these accusations?
You know, we have refused it 1,000 times. Every time I speak to a journalist and I get this question, I say the same thing, that these rumors, this disinformation, these charges that the United States supports Daesh are wrong. I'm saying it to you, I've said it to...
But we haven't seen any official statement from State Department.
Well, we have. We have issued numerous statements. I've issued them from here in the embassy. The State Department has issued them. You know, it's just bad information.
The United States is accused to divide Iraq through arming directly Peshmerga and the Sunni tribes. What would you say about this?
Well, again, thank you for allowing me to clarify this point. So the United States supports a unified, sovereign Iraq. All of the assistance that the United States is providing to Iraq, whether it ends up with the Peshmerga or it ends up with Sunni tribes, all of it passes through the government of Iraq. So the United States does not wish to divide Iraq, and we certainly won't do anything in Iraq without the permission of the central government. All of our military activities, all of our humanitarian activities, all of our activities we carry out at the invitation and request of the government of Iraq. So when we talk about, U.S. military assistance to the Peshmerga, all that is approved in the Ministry of Defense. It all stops here in Baghdad before it goes on to Erbil. It's inspected and approved, and then it proceeds to Erbil. And that's exactly how we want it. And let me just take this opportunity to say, we're providing $1.6 billion in military assistance to Iraq, to the Iraqi security forces. We're providing
$1.6 billion.
We're providing 9 brigade sets to the Iraqi security forces. So we're providing a tremendous amount of assistance directly to the Iraqi security forces and directly to the counterterrorism service. And we want these services to defeat Daesh on the ground while we support them from the air.
And not directly to the Sunni tribes or Peshmerga without the knowledge of the government.
Everything, anything of ours that goes to the Sunni tribes or to the Peshmerga goes through the government of Iraq.
The security agreement between the United States and al-Maliki assures that there is no intervention or ground intervention from any foreign party. What about the Iranian forces that are fighting Daesh in Iraq and Syria?
So again, the United States is very proud of our strategic framework agreement with Iraq, and there is a security component in that agreement. And the United States is fulfilling that agreement by providing support to the Iraqi security forces as requested and as invited by the government of Iraq. So based on our mutual conversations, the United States and Iraq have agreed that the United States will provide airstrikes against Daesh, intelligence support, training and equipping of Iraqi security forces, and $1.6 billion in new advising and assisting of the Iraqi commanders. So the United States is doing exactly what we have been asked to do by the government of Iraq.
But there is a breach in the agreement.
There is a what?
A breach.
A breach?
Yeah.
No, there's no breach, and there's no specific discussion. There's no specific language in the agreement as you suggest. But the United States respects that Iran is also under threat from Daesh, and the United States recognizes that the government of Iraq and the government of Iran are also going to cooperate in the fight against Daesh. The United States and the government of Iran are not going to cooperate in the fight against Daesh, but we recognize that Iraq and Iran have relations, and they have security cooperation, especially in fighting Daesh. So what we'll do is we'll continue to do exactly what the government of Iraq has asked us to do. That's airstrikes, that's train and equip, that's advise and assist, and that's intelligence support. And we think that working with the Iraqi security forces, we will defeat Daesh.
What's your position on the Turkish intervention?
So, as you know, there's now a discussion of the fact that the government of Turkey has a certain number of troops, I don't know how many troops, inside of Iraq. We believe that the United States, like the United States, any troops that are in Iraq should be at the invitation any troops that are inside of Iraq should be at the invitation of the government of Iraq.
They talked about hundreds of troops.
So I've seen those reports, but I can't verify them. So, we believe that Iraqi sovereignty is sacred. We think that any foreign troops inside of Iraq must be at the invitation of the government. And we think that the government of Iraq and the government of Turkey should resolve this issue between them.
So you are against the intervention of Turkish intervention?
Well, the United States welcomes Turkish support against Daesh, and any contribution it wishes to make to the coalition. But if it's going to do that, of course it has to be coordinated and at the invitation of the government of Iraq.
What's your opinion on the safe zone that Turkey is going to establish in Iraq?
So I'm not familiar with any proposal for a Turkish safe zone in Iraq, but I would just go back to what I said earlier, which is that any activities carried out by the government of Turkey inside of Iraq should be at the request and invitation of the government of Iraq. That's the principle that we are operating under. So all activities carried out by the United States inside of Iraq are carried out with the invitation and coordination of the government.
This is a diplomatic answer from a diplomat.
Yes, it is, because that's what I am.
Many Iraqis believe that the United States handed Iraq to Iran in exchange of the nuclear weapon agreement. What would you say?
Well, I would certainly disagree with that. I don't think the United States ever had Iraq to hand over, and I don't think that it's been handed over to Iran by anyone. I think Iraq Iraq is a sovereign and unified state, and it has free will. And so, again, I think that there are tremendous benefits for Iraq under the strategic framework with the United States. There are benefits of that relationship that come only with a relationship with the United States. The access to the international financial institutions, the access to new capital, to U.S. investment, the access to new technologies that'll create jobs and create new opportunities in the areas of science and agriculture and even tourism. So, there are tremendous benefits for Iraq to have that relationship with the United States. And we don't have any restrictions on that relationship. We're not saying that this relationship has to be exclusive with Iraq. We recognize that Iraq is going to live in the region, that it has neighbors, that it has borders, and we are going to respect that. But I think it's very important for Iraqis to recognize the benefits of the relationship with the United States.
What's your position regarding the threats of Hadi al-Amiri when he said that the American bases will be the target of the Islamic resistance?
So I don't think it's helpful to have this kind of threatening language, but the United States has no intention to create U.S. military bases in Iraq. So it's not really relevant. I mean, the United States is here as a guest of the government of Iraq, and we're carrying out security functions that we've been asked to carry out by the government of Iraq. So there's no reason for anyone to be threatened by what the United States is doing here. We have one mission here. Our security mission has one priority, which is to defeat Daesh. And nobody should feel threatened by that objective.
Talking about the current situation, what do you think about the performance, or what's your impression about the performance of the Iraqi government led by Haidar al-Abadi?
Yeah. So we support Prime Minister Abadi. We think that he came into a very difficult situation, and he has reversed the security crisis, and now Daesh is no longer winning, Daesh is now losing, and Daesh is being expelled. We also support the Prime Minister's vision as laid out in the national program. We support his vision for reform, and we're supporting his efforts at technical reform through the Ministries of Finance and Oil and some of the other ministries. I think that the Prime Minister has distinguished himself in the international arena at international meetings. People admire what he's trying to do for Iraq. I know my president admires what he's trying to do for Iraq and wants to support his efforts.
Do you think that the Iraqi government will ask for Russian airstrikes to intervene in Iraq?
Well, that'll be a decision for the Iraqi government. And, there's a problem with bringing the Russians in, though, and let's be clear about it. When the Russians started carrying out airstrikes inside of Syria, they didn't strike Daesh. Instead, they've struck at everybody except Daesh, so that only a small percentage of the airstrikes that the Russians are carrying out inside of Syria are being carried out against Daesh. So as a result of that, as a result of the strikes against other moderate opposition groups, Daesh has actually gained ground inside of Syria. There's another problem with the Russian airstrikes, which is that they do not have the capability to carry out precision strikes the way the United States does. So what we're seeing from the Russian airstrikes is a high number of civilian casualties and even friendly KIA killed in action, friendly killed in action.
Friendly kill in action.
So, you want to be very careful before you invite the Russians in.
Are you addressing this portfolio seriously?
Well, I address all my portfolios seriously, but I think, again, the United States is committed to supporting Iraq in its effort to defeat Daesh. And the government of Iraq and the Iraqi security forces are succeeding in defeating Daesh, and the United States will continue to support that effort.
Do you think the U.S. plans to eliminate Daesh is a long-term plan?
So I honestly don't know how long it's going to take to defeat Daesh. Daesh is losing. Daesh is receding in all areas, and I think when the Iraqi security forces fully retake Ramadi, that'll be a very important symbol of success in defeating Daesh. So there's no reason for the campaign against Daesh inside of Iraq to be a long-term. I think that we have a long-term challenge in defeating worldwide terrorism. I think we have a long-term challenge in defeating the people and ideas that animate Daesh. But I think that, to defeat Daesh in Iraq, this is something that can be achieved in the short term.
Can't be achieved in the short term.
That can be achieved in a relatively short term, but I don't know how long it's going to take. That'll be up to the security forces.
People in Iraq started losing hope and started losing trust in the United States. What would you say?
I think that Iraq has gone through a very difficult period. Many people have lost their homes, and people have really suffered under Daesh, and people are suffering under these current economic conditions. And the United States has stepped in many ways to support the government of Iraq. We talked about the security assistance. But it's also important to talk about the humanitarian assistance. As you would expect, the United States is the #1 donor of humanitarian assistance in Iraq. We've now given over $600 million in humanitarian assistance in the last 15 months. And we want to support the Iraqis who are suffering under these terrible conditions now. One of the grants that we're giving is we just are bringing in $70 million of winterization, clothes, and equipment. This is going to include 450,000 sets of winter clothes for children, 150,000 blankets, 75,000 hygiene kits.
Yeah, but I mean, Iraq.
So we're providing this humanitarian assistance, and we're committed also to supporting the stabilization process. So as you look at the challenges that are facing Iraq, we are working at every level with the permission of the government, at the request of the government. And we will continue to do that. Daesh is losing, but it's tough. It's a tough enemy, and it controlled a lot of territory a year ago. So we're going to continue to support the Iraqi security forces, push Daesh back, and expel them from Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, Iraqi people think that if you are serious about demolishing Daesh, you can do it.
Well, we are doing it, but we're going to do it in a way.
I mean, quickly.
Yeah, well, we are doing it, but we're going to do it in a way that does not destroy infrastructure, and does not kill civilians, and does not create more trouble for Iraq in the future. So we're doing it exactly the way that the government of Iraq has asked us to do.
What's the priorities of the United States in Iraq for now?
So the priorities are defeat Daesh, humanitarian assistance, support the displaced people, help the people who are suffering, help them return to their homes, and support the Prime Minister in his vision for national reconciliation and growth.
What advice, at the end of the interview, what advice would you give to the Iraqi officials and to the Iraqi people?
That's a great question, Rula. Thank you. I would say that, again, as we've been discussing, the United States is a tremendous security partner. No other country in the world can bring the security support that Iraq has brought. I don't know if you saw, there was a Wall Street Journal article 2 days ago in the United States, and it was yesterday, it was interviewing one of the commanders in Ramadi. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about the effort to return to the Anbar Operations Center. And the Iraqi security forces were in a tough firefight against Daesh. And he called in, he said, I need air support. And they said, it'll be there in 7 minutes. And in 7 minutes, the air support was there, mm-hmm. and it defeated the enemy. That's a tremendous benefit for the Iraqi security forces and for our partnership. But there's an even better part of this partnership that I think we need to work harder at taking advantage of. And it's what you were asking about with the exchanges. It's what you were asking about with the economic partnership, the investment. It's the technology. It's the access to capital. It's the access to financial markets. These are things that you can only get with a great partnership with the United States. The United States can bring these assets, and we also bring the whole world in with us. We've brought a coalition of 62 countries in to support Iraq defeat Daesh. So there are tremendous benefits to this relationship, and it's not at anybody else's cost. This is not a zero-sum game. We want to have this partnership with Iraq, recognizing your place in the region, recognizing that you're going to have regional partnerships with all of your neighbors, and we support that. But we want to see Iraq succeed. We want to see the Iraqi people achieve their potential. We want to see them visit the United States. We want to see them study in the United States. We want to see them raise their children in a peaceful, kind society. And, we're really committed to doing those things. And that's why I'm here. I mean, I didn't come out here not to do those things. I came out here to do those things. And all of my staff, the Iraqis and the Americans, that's why they're here. They came here to do those things. They've left their families behind. They've sacrificed a lot to be here because they really want to help the people of Iraq.
Any specific advice to the people of Iraq who lost trust the United States?
I would say look a little bit deeper. Don't accept the propaganda. Don't accept what they call the conventional wisdom, or what people are trying to say. I think you need to look deeper at what the U.S. contribution is, and also what the U.S. contribution can be, because there's tremendous benefits to having a relationship with the United States. We're an $18 trillion economy. We have the world's cutting-edge technology and security, but also in many other areas. And these are all things that Iraq can take advantage of through the Strategic Framework Agreement. That makes some people nervous. That makes some people a little bit resistant, a little intimidated maybe, but they shouldn't feel that way because we're just interested in the partnership.
Mr. the Ambassador, thank you so much for hosting us, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much.
Merry
Beautiful.
Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, and please give us all our thanks and praise. Thank you very much. Thank you.